Before we begin, as always, I want to acknowledge um, something rather sacred. This episode, I'll be exploring how stories that we carry, especially the ones that we didn't choose, can quietly shape and shrink and even control our lives. So, if you're already feeling emotionally raw, or tender, or overwhelmed, just want to remind you, you are allowed to pause. You don't have to confront all of this right now. This space here, as you're listening, is yours. So take care of you. Come back when it feels safe to continue. Your timing is not a flaw. It's really, I think, a part of your healing. So if you're ready, let's begin. You weren't just trapped in a relationship or a movement or a toxic group. You were trapped in a story that told you who you were allowed to be, how you were allowed to feel, and what roles you had to play to be seen or acknowledged, what desires you had to bury to stay loved. And at first, you didn't notice this because the story felt really familiar and maybe even noble. It made you feel like a survivor or a helper or a loyal one, someone who was strong enough to carry everyone else's weight, or someone who didn't really need very much in the first place, someone who always knew their place. But here's the problem with that story. You didn't write it. That story was handed to you, wasn't it? And the longer you lived inside of that story, the more it started living inside of you as well. And so you stopped questioning it, you stopped editing it, you stopped imagining a version of life where you could be more than what the story really required. And that's how it became a kind of a shackle. Because you see, stories shape identity, and an identity shapes behavior. So if someone can control the story that you tell about yourself, well, then they really don't need to threaten you anymore, do they? They just need to narrate what your worth is. This is, I think, one of the deepest forms of emotional control. It, it, it's what makes grooming so hard to recognize and even harder to escape, because the shackles aren't around your wrist per se. The shackles are really around your belief system. Beliefs like, this is just who I am, right? Or this is all I'll ever be. Or this is all I'm really good for. This is how people like me are really supposed to behave, right? This is what love is supposed to feel like, isn't it? But here's the hard part, though, my listener. Sometimes the story feels true because you've repeated it so many times, because it's really what's helped you to survive in the past. It Because it really helped you make sense of your pain, because someone important reinforced that story again and again. But familiarity is not the same as truth, though, is it? And survival is not the same as wholeness. See, you might have needed that story once upon a time, and you don't have to keep living inside that story now, though. So let me say this again. You, my dear listener, are allowed to outgrow the story that once helped you survive. You're allowed to rewrite that part that no longer fits. And you're allowed to name the plot twist that you never really consented to. You're allowed to throw out the ending that they gave you and choose a different one that you like better. But that starts first with honesty. That starts with the kind of honesty that says, in essence, I wasn't always free to choose who I became. See, I played roles to stay safe. I dimmed my light to avoid abandonment. I kept the peace by becoming smaller than my truth. And I confused performance with identity. And in so doing, I mistook compliance for character. And and now I'm ready to tell a new story. But here's, I think, where that internal resistance begins to rise again. Because if you've been in systems that benefit from your predictability, your growth will feel a lot like a threat. When you start questioning the script, well, they're going to come and accuse you of forgetting who you are, of betraying the role that you have played so well, of being disloyal to the truth. But that's not true. That's, I think, what we could call narrative control. And it's not just about behavior, it's even more so about belonging. Because many of us, we stayed in these toxic systems not because we were convinced as much as because we were cast into those roles. You were cast as, say, the fixer, or the forgiver, or the peacemaker, or the grateful one, or the strong one, the quiet one, the one who doesn't ask for too much, the one who always understands, right? The one who never gets mad, the one who sacrifices, the one who knows better. And all these roles, I mean, they sound noble, don't they? But they're the very thing that kept you from being human. I mean, they made you a character in someone else's show, in essence, right? And if you ever try to step off that stage, man, the audience will gasp, right? Because how dare you want to be the author of something new now? How dare you, for example, disrupt the script that they have fashioned for you? But that's exactly, I think, what healing does require. It requires you to stop performing and to start narrating a different story, to reclaim the authorship of the story that you're probably still living. And here's what it gets really powerful, I think. When you start rewriting your story, it's then that you realize how many lines in your old story were really lies. Lies like you're only valuable when you're needed, or you're far too much for everyone, you're too extra, you're too complicated to be loved. See, people leave when you tell the truth, or your pain is always a burden, or your desires are kind of selfish, your wholeness is dangerous. But those were never your lines, were they? They were written to keep you from noticing how powerful your voice really is. And the moment that you say, I don't believe this anymore, that's the moment that you break the spell and you interpret the pattern. And then you reintroduce yourself to yourself. In essence, you stop being a puppet and then you become a person, your own person again. But here's the thing about the shackles. They're heavy. And when they've been there on for a long time, freedom can feel kind of disorienting. You might miss the clarity of the old roles you once played. You might grieve the relationships that only worked when you stayed in the character that had been set for you. You might even wonder who you even are when you're not playing or being in that role, busy pleasing or proving or performing for others. I mean, that's normal. That's the pain of re-entry. Because when you stop living in a story that was, in essence, written for you, it's then that you enter a blank page. And the blank pages can be supremely terrifying until they become liberating. So let me offer you this. You are allowed to start small. And you don't have to rewrite your whole life overnight, okay? You don't have to prove you're like healing in one chapter. You don't have to, in essence, become an expert in your own new voice, like right away. You just have to begin. You just have to begin noticing the lines that no longer really fit anymore. You just have to begin practicing words that feel more honest. And then begin surrounding yourself with people who don't need you to play any part of a role to feel safe around you. Because real connection does not need a performance. Real connection needs presence. And real healing doesn't come from finding a better script. Real healing comes from finding your own script. So, my dear listener, you're not too late. You're not too broken. You're not too far into the story to change the ending. You're, I think, just ready in this moment. Ready to name the chains, right? Ready to change the character and to shred what was assigned to you. Ready to stop being a background voice in someone else's narrative or someone else's story. You are not what happened to you. You are a version of you that someone else narrated. And you're not stuck in the part that you had to play just to be accepted or loved or seen. You can actually be the author in your own story. So, the pen has always belonged to you. Listen, my dear listener, if this episode has helped you perhaps recognize some difference between the story you were told and the story that you want to live for yourself, tomorrow's episode is going to be an important one. I think I titled it From Curiosity to Captivity. And in this episode tomorrow, I'm going to explore how quickly grooming systems like the 764 pull people in, not with force or with threats or antagonism, but with a spark of curiosity, a question, a click, a moment, and how that moment becomes the trap. So we'll talk about how to interpret the descent, in essence, both for ourselves and for those that we love as well. But until then, keep listening for your real voice. Keep noticing the lies that once felt like truth, and then keep writing a story that makes space for your whole self to be seen, to be heard, to be free. Thanks for watching this episode. I will see you tomorrow.